3 weeks ago, he was at the Six Invitational playing for a team who had just burst into the quarterfinals of a major, the semifinals of a major only 3 months prior, but now here he sits, different jersey on, different logo on his chest as the backbone of a new veritable supergroup of European Rainbow Six players, and somehow there's also a Brazilian in the mix, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we'll talk about over the next 20 minutes. So Prano, congrats on the move to G2, and thanks for taking a couple minutes to chat with me, dude.
Thank you for having me.
So, dude, how does it feel? Like one of the biggest esports organizations in the world with a team that looks as stacked as this G2 lineup was. How does it feel? Give me your first impressions.
I mean, in general, like you said, G2 as one of the biggest esports organizations in the world, everything feels a bit bigger in general. Like everybody is in the office. I've never been to a boot camp like this before in my previous teams. Everybody's pretty hyped, and in general, as a team is just like constructed, we are pretty hyped, and we feel like we can beat everybody in the world.
You didn't have to move all that far, right? For you to just go to G2 HQ, it wasn't that big of a transition for you because it's in the same country, right?
Yes, exactly. But I actually moved to Berlin as well, just to be closer, and I'm living with Carl right now, just to get him used to like Germany and the German lifestyle. I would say, just show him. Show him a bit what life's about. Obviously, he's a bit young still, so I'm joking that he's my little child.
I was going to say, what's it like having Alamau of all people as a roommate?
I mean, yeah, it's like my little son, to be honest, but I'm having fun with it.
That's awesome. All right, so here's one big question. Obviously, the announcements come out at this point, but do you think in your head that this qualifies as like a quote-unquote super team? Now, that word in Rainbow Six kind of has a weird connotation because it sets very high expectations, obviously, and some other teams that have had that label sometimes don't really go on to do very much. But do you think that this G2 actually fits that term?
I mean, I definitely think so. I mean, obviously, we have a lot of players, high caliber players, world-class players, I would say. Everybody on this team is a world-class player. The only difference to previous super teams, and especially like the previous one on G2, is that I would say that we have the right people in the right roles this time. It's not five fraggers playing. It's actually a support player, a second support, an entry, second entry, flex players. So we have everything and everybody on the right positions to actually make it work this time.
All right, and we'll go through the other details of what that team looks like in a second, but because you're here and because I know there were probably some people who wouldn't have expected Rogue to just let you go in the way that they did, let's talk about some time on Rogue real quick. So you joined that Rogue roster back in Stage 3 of the EUL, got to 4th place with that team, and then had a run at the Sweden Major that I know exceeded a lot of people's expectations by defeating Team 1 in those quarterfinals. So talk about that early time on Rogue and how it was going with them.
I mean, I still love the Rogue Boys. Obviously, the guys that were on the team, they're all my friends. I was grateful that they picked me up for Stage 3, especially because they gave me the opportunity to showcase my skills as an IGL, because before that I had to play the Fragger role, because even at Team Secret, when I wanted to go for an IGL role, I couldn't because we didn't have the right people around that to like frag out, so I had to stay on the fragging role. So I was really grateful. I had a lot of fun there, like with my teammates. I was so proud that we made the major. I was so proud at the run that we had. Obviously, I wanted to win it all, and I still think we should have beaten NIP in the semifinals.
Sure.
And we just lost to ourselves. But it was a great experience.
And that transition from Stage 3 and everyone going, oh, well, this Rogue team's kind of had a bit of a turnaround, but then going into the Sweden Major, when you've had, or the Rogue team prior to you joining had not really been doing that hot, but now all of a sudden there's an opportunity for the Invitational on the line. When you're going into the Sweden Major, what's the internal expectation for yourself? How far are you anticipating that this team can go?
I mean, as a team, I think we were all thinking that we could win the event. I don't think there was any doubts about that. We knew that we had a strong playstyle, especially against other regions and teams that haven't played us yet, with unexpected pushes and stuff like that, with my calling. So we knew we could win, or we definitely also had the expectations to win that event, yeah.
Gotcha. And then moving from that into the Invitational, you had snuck into it just barely because when you beat Team 1 in the quarterfinals, that meant that you jumped over TSM to get there. But that didn't fare nearly as well. So this question's kind of in two parts. One, what happened? And two, do you think that's kind of where the crack for you started to form, where you didn't really know if Rogue was going to work out anymore?
I mean, first, what happened? I think we just underperformed. There was games where people just couldn't frag. There was games where we as a unit didn't function as well as we should, where we didn't execute the plans well enough, where maybe my calling wasn't on point in certain games. So we just didn't play well enough. We should do better, obviously. I mean, going out of groups was or getting out of groups was actually pretty nice. At least
Yeah.
there's that. But getting knocked out in the first round of the loser bracket wasn't really nice, and we expected a lot more from ourselves. But I don't think that was like a first crack or like a deal breaker for me to like leave Rogue. So like I would have stayed or could have stayed at Rogue regardless, even if we would have like get knocked out in groups.
That's fair. So SI performance wasn't necessarily like a linchpin, so to speak, for you to want to,
No,
to jump ship. All right, that makes
no.
sense. But I guess in that spirit, what prompted the want to move away from that squad? Was it because G2 had a better offer on the table, or you didn't feel like Rogue was really capable of advancing further? What's the catalyst for you deciding, not Rogue's not ready to play for me anymore?
To be honest, I was contemplating because my contract ran out after SI, and I was contemplating whether I want to stay with the org and what the long-term plans were. Just because I didn't know what the plans were, and the manager. Obviously, we see with the Empire situation right now that the org holds a lot of power.
Right.
So I wanted to know what the plans were from the org standpoint with the roster and stuff like that. And yeah, at SI, I got information after we've been knocked out from a friend that was in contact with some people in the rogue management that they were actually spreading lies about me and making stuff up that I was having ridiculous demands in regards to salary and stuff like that.
That you
So
were
that was
making
just
demands
a
of Rogue that were out of whack, or
yeah, that I was making demands for, let's just say 50K a month, for example, like something that's completely not true.
yeah.
And I just felt like, and it was to a person that was not even in the org, so it was an outsider, and I was just like, that's too unprofessional for me. Then like, I don't want to re-sign with someone that is talking like that about me. So that was the biggest reason. Because if that wouldn't have happened, I probably would have stayed at Rogue.
You would so a little bit of unprofessionality with a story that didn't make any sense. Was that rooted in any truth and it was just something that could have been taken out of context in some way, or was it mostly BS?
I mean, obviously, we were in negotiations before the event for a little bit
Yeah.
because they wanted to extend my contract, and I was also willing to extend my contract, obviously. But like, what's been said about me in like conversations from like management people was something that I just didn't agree with, and that I didn't want to work with anymore.
Okay. So your mind had kind of been made up about not wanting to do anything else with Rogue before
Exactly. Yeah.
G2 had an offer on the table. Before G2 was
Exactly.
like, "Hey, let's figure out if we can do something together."
Yes. Exactly.
All right. So then how does G2 enter the picture? Did they learn about this whole debacle behind the scenes and go, "Hey, it kind of seems like Prano's about to be a free agent in a little bit." What was that process like?
Yeah, so basically after SI was a free agent, and right after SI the transfer window opened as well. So I got in contact with different kind of orgs, different kind of rosters, for to see what my options were, to see if I maybe had to move to like NA or APAC even. And yeah, we had like a good talk with G2. I saw they presented me the opportunity of like joining maybe, like trialing, see what it's like, what the roster would look like, and the general idea. And I was very interested because like obviously the roster looks great on paper. I've been friends with some people on the team before and stuff, so it makes sense to me.
Did the roster that you initially started trialing with, was that the same one as the one that just got announced, or were there some changes that were made to it while you were in the process of trialing and getting that roster figured out?
No, there was like no real changes to be honest.
Okay, so
So
what it looks like now is the same as what it was when you started, essentially.
yes.
Okay. What do you think about your teammates now at this point that you've had all this time to start integrating with them and you're working together, and obviously you think the team can do great things, but there's a difference between how you can perform and how you guys work together as a unit.
Um, I mean, you see the little dwarf on the screen behind me. Um,
We went this long without talking about it, so yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's a little man that can go big in games, so we're hoping to see that from him. But honestly, the first night we met each other at boot camp, we went out, we had a great time. Everybody's getting along quite well, to be honest. I'm quite surprised, actually. There's no one in the team that is actually just keeping to themselves. Obviously, like Jake, for example, is a bit on the quieter side, a bit on the mature side, more mature side. He's a bit older as well. I'm the same thing. Like sometimes I can get a bit crazy, but in general, I'm more mature. And then we have people like Carl and Doki that are a bit more crazy. But everybody's getting along very well. We have fun together. We are going out. We're going out for food every single day. We're just having fun, and I'm quite surprised that everybody is getting along that well. To be honest, yeah.
Who was the idea that came up with Alamau's whole twit longer, and then everyone just decides, you know what, it's time to bait off of this and try to convince people he's still in Brazil? Whose idea was that?
I mean, first of all, it was Alamao's idea to like do the break thing, tweet
Yeah.
longer, and then we were just sitting here, and then he tweeted, and then it was like Doki, oh, maybe we should say something about his visa and stuff like that. So Doki, the mastermind, yeah, he came up with it.
It's just been a week of debates, man. No one's gonna know what they need to believe anymore.
And there's also been so many leaks that were untrue, so I mean,
Yeah,
we just had to feed off of that, to be honest.
because
Yeah.
I think when you and I were talking originally, the roster that I said, or that I was like, hey, is it this roster? You were like, nope, Doki's also here, and I went, oh, okay, that makes way more sense. So yeah, no, there were a lot of those flying around, but it stayed mostly under wraps, I feel like, up until the announcement actually came out, which I think is cool because there aren't that many teams that really like stay secret, so to speak,
Yeah.
until announcements drop anymore. But you weren't necessarily concerned about that, right? You were just like, yeah, we know that this team's going to be good, but we're not so concerned about it like leaking out to Reddit or something before it gets announced or anything.
No, it's Siege at the end of the day, like the Siege community, everything gets leaked at some point. We knew that it was a possibility, but we didn't really like pay attention. Like obviously we didn't want it to get leaked because it's nicer for everybody, for the fans, for the community, if it's like a big announcement coming out without it being leaked beforehand. But if it happens, it happens. So it was just fun for us to see the different kind of roster iterations that were flying around and who we were to pick up. For example, Benjamaster,
Yeah.
um, who was like never really an option to us. It was just fun to see that, to be
All
honest.
right.
Yeah.
So you're on the team now. How are you integrating with the roster? Like your role, your responsibility, is it a lot more of the same from what you were doing on Rogue and you're kind of playing into that strength, or is it a little bit different from what you were doing before?
I'd say it's pretty much the same. I'm on the hard support IGL role. It's what I do best in my opinion. Leading and guiding, drowning and dying, and maybe get a plant down here or there.
Yeah.
So the only difference is that I have like more vocal people around me now. Like Carl is very vocal, even though it's like his first English speaking team. He's very vocal about executes threats, opportunities that he spots, and capitalizing off of them. Ben is very vocal. So Citizen is also very vocal, and then we have Doki who's non-stop talking. Sometimes I just wish he would shut up, but yeah,
Something tells me you're biased. It seems like you spent a little bit too much time around him and you haven't even played a game yet. So,
yeah.
uh, one interesting question I had, obviously Alamau's integration with the roster coming from a different country, having to get used to like a different time zone, a different region altogether. But from your understanding, what was the reason that they wanted to bring him in? There were talks about him going to G2 as early as like the Six Invitational from last year, from 9 months ago. But obviously none of that came to fruition until now. How's he incorporating with this team and why him over somebody else?
I mean, I can't speak for what happened in the past and if the talks fell through or whatever, because I wasn't part of anything of that
Right, right.
of that nature. But I mean, in general, he's a great player. He's shown on multiple events that he can perform very well. He is also just the right kind of type of player, like spotting opportunities, being able to flex onto different operators, not only being stuck on, for example, just Diana and Diego to get his kills, but also can go onto the Ying, can go onto the Osa, can even go on a Maru. Like we have, especially with the new repick, a lot of opportunities and options for him to flex off of things and like spot opportunities in the drone phase. And he's excelling very well in that role. So I think that's a big reason, and obviously he's a big social media presence as well.
Right. Yeah. There would be a lot of people from Brazil who are about to come over, and like you are probably about to get bombarded with a whole bunch more Brazilian follows. So just brace yourself for a second because that might happen when EU starts.
I mean, it's nice for a change because every time I beat Brazilian teams, I got hate DMs. So maybe this time
Right.
they will be a lot nicer.
Hopefully, please, please be kind to my boy. That'd be great. All right. What are your expectations for this roster? Like short term and long term. Like short term being like first stage, first couple of months. Long term, I don't know, maybe like a year down the road. What are you hoping to get out of this G2 team? Do you want a fast start? Is it kind of a process where, like the announcement mentioned, this is kind of like a rebirth, so to speak, for G2? What are you thinking?
I mean, obviously we want to fast out, but we also don't want to slow down afterwards. So the long-term goal is winning an invitational. Obviously, we're all here to do that. We want to do that, and we're working towards that goal. And short-term goal, we just want to make the major. There's obviously some issues, different kind of play styles, especially from people coming from other regions when people play at a different pace and stuff like that. So we need to get used to each other. But we dealt with that pretty well in the first few days, I feel like. There's ups and downs, obviously, but we just want to make the major. And then obviously we want to win the major as well. But for the just EU stage, top four as a first goal for the first stage, depending on when it starts, obviously. If it starts in whenever, then we want to win the whole thing, as always. But the first goal is just to get to the major and have a first fast start. Just don't slow down, and then smash everybody on our way.
Sounds good to me. But the last time that there was something that was like a quote unquote super team or a super group that had a whole bunch of really potent stars on it back for G2, what at this point was like 2 years ago, what you mentioned about like no supports, all frags kind of play style. This G2, you already said there's going to be hard stuck roles, or not hard stuck, but things will be more set, people kind of playing into their strengths. But how is this team specifically going to be different than that first G2 super team attempt from forever ago?
We have me on IGL, we have Carl on the flex, and that's all we need, basically. Huh.
Don't even need Citizen, damn.
And I mean, he's going to kill people every single time. Like, Citizen, he's one of the most consistent players in the world, and he's getting his frags. I mean, he broke the kill record for best of 5 and the best of 3 recently. So we just know that he's getting his frags. We have Doki in addition to that, who can pop off at any given day and just go for a 20 bomb. We even have Jake, who's played entry before, who's like one of the best mechanical players I've ever seen. I think probably he has the best mechanics of the team. Just watching him play, I'm just like, bro, can you give me some of your mechanical skill, please?
Yeah, please just absorb a little bit of it from him because you're
Yeah.
working with him now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We just have players that know their roles, which is like really important, that also understand that a team just full of fraggers doesn't work. Everybody has to make a sacrifice to make this work. Not everybody can just play as the single star player on the team, because there's multiple people now that can do that. And everybody buys into that idea, and I think that's the difference.
All right. Anything else over the course of the past couple of minutes that we didn't cover that is something that you'd like to mention, bring up, get off your chest in some way?
Oh, not really, to be honest. I just think that people should be ready for us coming in. I think we're coming in hot, to be honest. I know there's high expectations, but we're ready to exceed them.
All right. And if I need everyone to get for the first EUL playdate those crowns that Doki's got and just like have them on in the webcams for EUL to start with, because geez, that image is about to be burned into my brain now.
We will try to make that work.
All right, sounds good. Prano, I appreciate you taking the time, brother. It was nice to get a little bit more insight onto G2. Best of luck in the EUL, and we'll see whether or not that major comes around in May for you guys.
Thank you.